This is Father Andrew Ritchie, and you're listening to Catholic Inspiration, a podcast from my website at studyprayserve.com. These homilies, presentations, and retreats form part of my ministry as a Catholic priest for the Diocese of Superior. And now I invite you to open your hearts to some Catholic inspiration. Today is Saturday of the 23rd week of the year. Our Gospel reading is Luke chapter 6, verses 43 to 49. Jesus said to his disciples, "A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For people do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person out of the store of goodness in his heart produces good. But an evil person out of a store of evil produces evil. For from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not do what I command? I will show you what someone is like who comes to me, listens to my words and acts on them. That one is like a man building a house, who dug deeply and laid the foundation on rock. When the flood came, the river burst against that house, but would not shake it because it had been well built. But the one who listens and does not act is like a person who built a house on the ground without a foundation. When the river burst against it, it collapsed at once and was completely destroyed." These are two powerful images that Jesus gives us that are spiritually sound. And you can take them and carry them really quite far in spiritual life as a guide for how we act and interact with others. I love this notion of the tree. And there's really two pieces we tease out of this. You know the tree by its own fruit. So if you see apples on the tree, you got an apple tree. If you see oranges, you're going to have an orange tree. You know the tree by the fruit that it's producing, so that in the season when there's no fruit on the tree, you can say, well, I saw the apples on there before. I know what kind of tree it is. But then you can say, all right, so you know the tree by its fruit, but then you also know what's going on in that tree by whether it's good fruit or rotten. And this point, my friends, this has a lot of practical application in our lives. If we recognize the fruit of someone's life, and then we understand, is it healthy or is it diseased? We will know a great deal about others by their own spiritual fruitfulness. You know, we all have different gifts, different abilities. And again, we know one another by those abilities. Some people have certain talents and abilities fixing cars. I ain't one of them. Some people have tremendous skills with construction and building and finishing things. I ain't one of them. My skill sets lie in a very different area with regards to research and get this public speaking. But the fact is that different skill sets are revealed, right? And in the revelation of our skills, we know a lot about the person who's doing the skill. But furthermore, you can have really good auto mechanics and really honest auto mechanics. You can have really good builders and really honest builders. You can have really good public speakers and really honest public speakers. Or you can have automotive mechanics, construction builders, and speakers who aren't spiritually fruitful. In fact, what comes out of them is destructive. What comes out of them erodes and corrodes the lives of those who are part of it. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that Jesus says, for every tree is known. It's known by its fruit. Known by the type and the quality. Well, let's then apply that, friends, to our lives right now. Let's talk about this bluntly because it has two dimensions. First, as it applies to ourselves, do we like the fruit on the tree of our lives? We can be honest. We can do this in the silence and the privacy of our own thoughts. But the fact is, do we like what we see coming out of us? This can be very awkward. It's very personal. But it can also be very instructive. Sometimes we need to acknowledge our own gifts, the fruitfulness of our lives. Because sometimes we ignore them, sometimes we deny them, sometimes we don't bring them forth. And that's a shame. Because God gave those gifts and they're meant to be used. But then the second dimension is, how are we using the gifts that we have? Are we using them for good or for evil? Are we using them to help and build up others, or are we destroying and tearing down lives? Again, this is like a personal, spiritual examination of conscience. And that's not a bad thing. But then we turn it outward, because we have to interact in the world. And this is really how we have a practical application about, do we read the room? We don't have to guess. We just look at the spiritual fruitfulness of someone's life. What type of fruit, what type of gifts and talents do they show? And then how are they using them, for good or for evil? Friends, that will carry us quite far in our ability to really work with people in a way that we say, I can build here, or I need to run away. That this is sound, or this is very, very uncertain ground. Because every tree is known by its fruit, we can then be able to not only look into our hearts, but also discern a great deal about the lives of those around us, and thereby make the decisions and choices we need, so that if we're trying to grow and build, if we're trying to unite and connect, we want to work with like-minded people who want to do the same. And if we walk into a room and there are other forces at work, then we have to look at this situation and say, how will I proceed? Lord, help me to be wise and prudent, because I'm seeing some things here that are not spiritually fruitful. Lord, guide me and direct me, that I will carry out your will even in uncertain times and in situations or dynamics that are potentially destructive. We live in an imperfect world, but this teaching of Jesus about knowing the tree by its fruit gives us an insight that can help us to discern where we see strengths and blessings, and then to determine how we might proceed for the glory of God. God bless you all. This is Father Andrew, and I hope this podcast inspires your faith. Now, if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend. And you can help me by leaving a rating and a review. I keep all my listeners in my daily prayers, and I ask for your prayers in return. God bless you, my friends.